Brutal. Brutal way that she suffered. Why somebody would want to do this to somebody else is beyond my comprehension.
A barbaric killing.
She was wrapped in tape, and she had had a sock shoved down her throat.
This is against every woman's instinct to leave your friend behind.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
He handcuffed her and threw her in the back of a van. This was not somebody in law enforcement at all. This was an abduction.
He's on parole, and he knows that we're looking at him.
He was not a truth teller. Well, is that because he's somehow involved in this homicide?
The truth will be revealed.
At least now we could say for sure, his DNA is not supposed to be there. I mean, I wasn't physically jumping up and down, but inside I was.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. New York City, where people come to chase their dreams and find success. But not far from the bright lights of Manhattan is the Belt Parkway in South Brooklyn and the notorious area of Fountain and Seaview.
Fountain Avenue is in one of the grittier areas of South Brooklyn. The Belt Parkway runs along one side of it. There's a creek that runs along the other side.
It's desolate, it's a dead end, no foot traffic, if any. Johns bring girls down to that area because no one's gonna bother you there.
It's been a known mob dumping ground. There's no reason to go there unless you're going fishing or dumping a body.
On Saturday, February 25th, 2006, a 911 call comes in at 8:26 p.m.
Police, what is emergency? Oh, yes, I found a DOA. It looks like a DOA on Seaview Avenue in Fountain. That's in Brooklyn, right? Oh, yes, and I seen him wrapped up in a sheet.
Right. It was a male. Do you see?
I don't see it. I didn't see it.
It was a body?
It looked like a body wrapped in a sheet, yes.
All right, you want to leave a name and number, sir?
No, I'd rather the name anonymous. I don't want to get involved.
We get this anonymous call that a guy saw what he believed was a body being dropped out of the back of a vehicle. And then he hung up.
Homicide detectives John Cornicello and Sean McTighe of Brooklyn's legendary 75th Precinct, also known as the 7-5, respond to the call.
We had found a girl. She had tape all over her face, and she was wrapped up in a blanket on Fountain Avenue on the side of the road. Initially, we thought it was a local prostitute. Could have very easily something happened, and the girl was disposed of there.
We weren't sure if it was a sex crime, but she's wrapped up in this blanket, and you want to keep it intact as much as possible before it goes to the medical examiner's office.
Brutal. Brutal way that she suffered. Why somebody would want to do this to somebody else is beyond my comprehension.
Detectives immediately start to process the scene, looking for any clues that could help with the investigation.
We did our initial canvass in the area, obviously looked for evidence around the body. Underneath her was a snow brush, so it could be important evidence.
There's no wallet, there's no ID, nothing to kind of help us to zero in on who she is.
The detective's only lead at this point is the anonymous 911 call, made a couple of miles from where the body was dropped.
The call came from a payphone by a diner on Linden Boulevard. Can we identify the caller? We spoke to the people in the diner, and we didn't get any results there. And it's a public payphone. Fingerprints, it's not going to be of any value. So we didn't have anything to go on.
With their initial canvass netting little to identify who the victim is and what happened to her, detectives are faced with another challenge.
She was preserved, for lack of a better word, because it was freezing in February. So that puts a hamper on pinpointing, at this point in the investigation, the time of death to find out exactly where she was and how she died.
When you don't know where someone has been in the last 24 hours, and you have someone who is found in the way that she was found, it's New York City. She could have come in contact with anyone. So if you don't have a timeline, you have an unsolved murder.
With so many unanswered questions, the detectives know that the road to the killer runs through identifying their Jane Doe.
We have to start by finding out who she is. And we really had a clean slate, unfortunately, to go on.
She was found in a desolate area. There were no cameras near where she was found. There wasn't a lot of people to be interviewed. There wasn't a big area to canvass. So we're hoping that the medical examiner will find any little thing in the investigation that's going to help us identify her. Because I can't find out who killed you unless I know who you are.
The only thing detectives can be sure of at this point is that a woman's body was found at 8:26 p.m. at Fountain in Seaview. They're counting on the autopsy to reveal more about how and when she died.
Her wrists were bound from behind with plastic zip ties. Inside the blanket, she was wrapped in tape, and below the tape, she had had a sock stuffed into her mouth and shoved down her throat. So ultimately, she died of asphyxia, the inability to get air to the lungs and blood to the brain. And it became clear from the autopsy and the internal examination that she had been the victim of a brutal sex crime.
She had distinctive tan lines, like boy shorts tan lines, as opposed to a bikini. And it's February. So this person obviously was just at a beach somewhere.
Her fingernails were also cut very short, and a chunk of her hair was hacked off.
And the way the fingernails and the hair were cut, that's not normal.
Why would someone cut off a woman's hair? Makes me think that this person is very careful. They're very planful. They know what they're doing, and they don't want DNA evidence. You use binding ties because you want to incapacitate your victims. If you're somebody who wants to become aroused by having someone held captive or humiliated or tortured, you want to make sure you have enough time to do what you need to do. These behaviors would suggest to me that they may have done something like this before.
The medical examiner could say that the time of death was within 12 to 24 hours of when we found her.
Detectives must now piece together Jane Doe's last 24 hours to find her killer, starting with identifying who she is.
The Daily News put out online rather quickly the fact that the police had provided to them, that a body has been found and appears to be homicidal in such a location and such a time.
Sometimes the police and the media have a very cooperative relationship. We can help them by getting the message out that a body has been found, that a killer's on the loose. You know, asking for help from the media to get the word out about it so they might be able to identify who this person was. And that message goes out to millions of people very quickly.
The morning after Jane Doe's discovery, a young woman, Alejandra St. Guillen, comes into the 75th precinct. She's seen the news bulletin and has information. Her sister is missing.
We bring her in the interview room. I ask her, why do you feel that this person is the person you think it is? She says her sister just got back from vacation from Florida, visiting with her mom and her stepdad. And she was out with friends the night before. So that's important because of the tan lines. But we just want to make sure. And I had a Polaroid picture now from the autopsy. And I showed her the picture and she was obviously distraught. Just in total disbelief, shock, you know, hysterical crying. So without even saying a word, I knew it was her relative.
Detectives are finally able to identify the victim of this grisly homicide. She's 24-year-old Emett St. Gian.
Emett was from the Boston area. She'd gone to a private school, Boston Latin. She was raised by her mother after her father died when she was 9 years old. Emett was following in her father's footsteps. He had studied criminal justice, and she was a criminal justice student at John Jay College. Emett was a brilliant young woman, on a roll. She could have gone and done anything.
So now I have her name, I get her family members' names, I get her friends' names, and then we decide who we're gonna go to first.
The night before Emett's body was found, she was out celebrating her upcoming 25th birthday with her best friend, Claire.
Claire came into the 75th precinct, and she sat down with us and went over the course of events of that night. So this particular night, they went to the Pioneer Bar in Manhattan.
In the old days, the Bowery was drunks and bums, and if you stopped your car, they would, try to clean your windshield with dirty rags, and you just wanted to get away from it. But, but now, in 2006, this is an up-and-coming area. So they were just going out to have a nice social night in a nice area of Manhattan.
I remember Claire telling us that it was between 3:30 maybe. Bars close at 4 in New York. Claire wants to go home, and Matt wants to still stay out. So they leave the Pioneer Bar, and they're having an argument outside of the bar. It wasn't normal for her to keep partying like this and not wanting to go home and not wanting to be with her friends.
Claire had tried to get her in a cab a couple times and was unsuccessful. And she threw up her hands and said, "You want to stay out? Stay out. I'm going home." And did.
Claire gets in a cab, she leaves. Emett now walks the opposite direction of the bar. That's 3:30. Claire now feels guilty and upset that she left her there, so Claire calls her. That's probably 3:45. "Where are you? I'm gonna come get you. I'm gonna bring you home." But Emett doesn't know what bar she's at. She said, "I've got a drink. Once I finish my drink, I'm leaving."
Claire's worried about her, but eventually Emett convinces her that everything's gonna be okay. I mean, this is against every woman's instinct to leave your friend behind.
And that's the last time she ever spoke to her.
Detectives have determined the last time anyone spoke to Emett was around 3:45 a.m. She was in a bar alone and had just left her best friend, Claire. But they don't know which bar.
I need to know, where did she go when she left Claire? When Claire pulls away in that cab, did she go north, south, east, west? Did she have a fight with anybody? Did somebody give Emett a ride home? A million questions, because we have to find out what happened to this girl.
I have kids, I have girls, and I remember going home and saying, "Here's the deal. Don't ever forget this. You go out with somebody, you leave with them. You don't leave your friends behind." Just a terrible life lesson to have to learn.
I've been out to bars, my girlfriends have been out to bars where, someone decides to leave early, you end up being there alone. Maybe you want to have one more drink. And this case really hammers home how vulnerable young women who are alone in bars after they've been drinking can be.
So a friend doesn't know where she is. A friend knows that she has a credit card. So we start getting records on her credit card usage. Where was her credit card used?
She bought 2 rum and cokes at the Falls Bar in Manhattan. That's probably 3:45. Now, she bought those 2 drinks with cash. It would have hurt our investigation tremendously.
What strikes me about this case, what really resonates, is the little breadcrumbs we leave behind in our lives. You have to ask yourself, had she not bought those 2 rum and cokes with a credit card and left some kind of trail behind, what other evidence do we have that she's even at the bar? So something as everyday, as seemingly benign as using a credit card ends up being so critical in this case.
The Falls Bar is only 2 blocks away from the Pioneer. So when you come out of the Pioneer, you make a right, and you can literally walk into the front door. of the falls. So the Falls Bar is the last place we know she was.
We have a starting point. Now we can narrow down. 3:45 a.m. she's there.
Detectives are now working with a 16-hour window between 3:45 a.m., when Emett paid for her drinks, and 8:26 p.m., when her body was found in South Brooklyn.
So we're in Manhattan. My expectation is we're gonna have video all over the place. You know, this is Manhattan, it's not Brooklyn. So we task a team with finding video. Maybe we can pick her up somewhere. Anything else that can maybe piece this together.
Security camera footage shows Emett entering the Falls Bar at 3:40 a.m. But there is no footage of her leaving the bar when it closes at 4 a.m. or any time thereafter.
Now we know where she was alive and well at around closing time on that Saturday morning. So now you have to look at the universe of characters who were in that place who might have something to say about this.
Bars and nightclubs present particular risks. They're what we call both crime generators and crime attractors. A crime generator is any place where crime arises because of opportunity, where there's alcohol and crowds involved and some people just can't control their instincts or their impulses. Crime attractors, at the same time, draw predators because they know a certain type of victim in a certain state may be there. How many people did she come into contact with that night? In narrowing down that list of persons of interest to potential suspects, you would always start with the staff. Who are the natural surveillance of the bar? These are the people working there who keep an eye on things, and those are the bartenders and the bouncers.
Detectives believe someone at the Falls Bar could be a witness, or even Emett's killer. The bartender remembers serving Emett that evening.
She's the one that actually sold the 2 drinks to Emett. She remembered Emett being intoxicated and it being the end of the night and being obligated to close the bar, and that there was talk of her having to leave.
The bartender tells detectives, at 4 a.m., bar manager Daniel Dorian wanted Emett out the door, once and for all.
The barmaid remembered Dorian wanting to get her out of the place because, and I don't know the exact words, but she had been drinking and, you know, she's crazy, we got to get her out of here.
Now it's time to go. She's like, I paid for my drinks, I'm not going anywhere. Dorian gets fed up. Maybe he doesn't want to deal with it. Maybe he's drinking. He tells the 2 bouncers, get her out of here.
Daniel Dorian's name is well known to police. His family owns a number of bars across the 5 boroughs.
Dorian was a piece of work. I mean, first he said he didn't remember her even being in the bar.
He said, well, I was working, counting the money for the night proceeds. So I don't know what you're talking about.
So on one hand, you have Dorian's statement, and then you have the barmaid who paints a whole different picture. So now, again, that's like, ooh, you know, why is he being evasive?
He was not a truth teller. And one has to ask oneself, well, is that because he's somehow involved in this homicide?
You know, you go back to a hunch, the story, just something was missing. And he says he didn't know anything, he didn't see anything. Something just wasn't right.
Their suspicions raised by how Daniel Dorian's story contradicts the bartender's. Detectives question Dorian about his whereabouts after the bar closed at 4 a.m.
And he says he's in an office in an isolated area. He's providing an opportunity where he's by himself, and now he's got this wide time frame of, well, I don't know when she left, I don't know when they left, and then I was there for maybe another hour.
The bar's already closed. Nobody was with this guy. So that's something we keep in the back of our mind. Maybe he had something to do with this.
Under the circumstances, it's just too many things that have to be answered, you know, that leave a question in your mind as an investigator. It raises him to, you know, to a pretty high level. Did he try to pick her up and then did something go bad and now is he off her?
Detectives have zeroed in on bar manager Daniel Dorian as their first suspect in the brutal murder of 24-year-old criminal justice student Emett St. Guillen.
If you're telling me you closed the place up, she was there. We know what time she was there from the receipt. But he's just saying, I don't know who this girl is. Obviously, there's something more to that.
The Falls was connected to the Dorian family, a notorious family in New York for several reasons. The patriarch, Red Dorian, was known as a bootlegger back in the 20s. The family opened a bar on the Upper East Side called Dorian's Red Hand after the patriarch. It was known as a place where prep school kids could go and get drunk and hook up with each other. That bar became notorious in the mid-'80s for the Jennifer Levin murder, the Preppy murder. It was a black eye for the family.
In this case, we see Dorian lying initially about his alibi. This is not that uncommon in that people lie in murder investigations all the time and they think they're white lies, and in reality, they can really derail an investigation. At the same time, it's uncanny that this is the second high-profile murder linked to a series of bars and nightclubs owned by the same family. It's like lightning striking twice in the same place.
So now we start to say, well, wait a minute. His father had this bar, patron is in there, is killed. And it creates all of this bad press on this restaurant and the father and his business. Now we're sitting here and it's a Dorian bar and we've got a female victim who was in here at some point. Is it connected to him? Or he can see where this is going and he's trying to distance himself from the circumstances.
As detectives weigh their next move with Dorian, there is an unexpected development in the case.
You get a phone call, get to headquarters right away. Don't tell anybody what you're doing or where you're going. So I'm looking at my partner, I said, wow, the guy's turned himself in.
Daniel Dorian wants to come in and give us a statement. But he wants to do it at police headquarters. He doesn't want to come to East New York. It's very different.
Detectives question Daniel Dorian again about the night Emett disappeared after closing time at the Falls bar.
Now he says, all right, listen, this is what happened. She was there. So he tells us that he sees Emett, she's very drunk, she's at the end of the bar, and she's arguing with him, I'm not leaving, I paid for these drinks. So that's when he puts the two bouncers on her, Daryl and Tim, that's their job, escort people out of the bar. And that's what they did.
At 4 a.m., the main entrance to the bar is already locked. So the two bouncers, Tim Catella and Daryl Littlejohn, escort Emett out a secondary side door exit at 4:10 a.m., where there are no security cameras.
Ultimately, Dorian, when he did come around, said, listen, that girl walked out of here under her own power, aided by my two bouncers, Tim and Daryl.
Daniel Dorian remains a suspect in Emett's murder, but detectives put him on the back burner while they question the two bouncers.
Danny Dorian didn't do any research on any of the people that were doing security for his operation. He had no idea who was working for him.
The police department's investigation revealed the lack of attention and concern and care that the manager of that bar exercised in hiring his bouncers. How did you get your bouncers? Oh, this one recommended this one, and he knows a friend, and I paid him $100 off the books at the end of the night, and that was it. And as long as they showed up and did their job, I was happy.
Once we start going to their backgrounds, Daryl was on parole for sure, and Tim was on probation. You have a curfew in general, but then you definitely can't work in a bar on parole. Now we know for sure you two were the last persons to see this girl outside this establishment.
Two doormen. Neither of them had any business working at the bar, interacting with vulnerable people under the influence of alcohol. At this point, the decision is, who do you zero in on?
Detectives shift the focus of their investigation to two bouncers at the Falls bar, Tim Catella and Daryl Littlejohn. They both escorted Emett out of the bar at 4:10 a.m.
So now we're going to circle back and ask them what happened. How did you get home that night?
Detectives start with Tim and ask him to come to the 75th precinct to answer some questions.
Tim lived in Staten Island. Daryl lived in Queens, complete opposite directions. So Daryl would go north in Manhattan towards either the bridge or the tunnel, and Tim would go to take the ferry over to Staten Island. Maybe 4:15. He said, I went to the ferry and I saw Daryl talking with Emett.
But he says he has no clue to what happened to either Littlejohn or Emett after he walked in that direction.
Detectives need more than Tim's word to corroborate his story, but they're putting him on ice until they talk to the second bouncer, Daryl Littlejohn.
Daryl Littlejohn's an ex-con. He was on parole at the time, and his employment at Dorian's bar was a violation of his parole agreement.
With Daryl Littlejohn directly in their crosshairs, detectives use his parole as leverage to haul him into the 7-5 for questioning.
So, start with a basic timeline, just like we have in the case. Tell me your daily schedule, tell me your routine. How do you get to work? How do you leave work? What are your hours? How long have you been working there? Do you remember this girl? He said he argued with her about racism and crime with black men. Daryl said he was a U.S. Marshal, which we know he wasn't. And they were just arguing about crime, how the statistics for black men are off than they should be. It was just a basic argument at a bar. He says he walked her out the door and she was on her way. He doesn't know how she got home. If she got in a cab or a subway, nothing.
Littlejohn denies having anything to do with Emmett's murder, but detectives press him for details about what he was doing between 4:15 a.m., when Tim walked away from him and Emett, and 8:26 p.m., when her body was found in South Brooklyn.
He's on parole, and he's also very cautious, and he knows that we're looking at him.
I mean, we talked to him for 2 days, over 8 hours and 8 hours. He never said, I don't want to talk to you. He'd say, I borrowed my ex-girlfriend's car and I was with her. I went to see my mom in the nursing home. He went to the nursing home. He didn't go visit his mom. I asked him, I said, maybe he went home with Emett. Maybe they had sex and she had a heart attack and died. Is that possible? But he was a career criminal. He wasn't talking.
Detectives are being stonewalled by Daryl Littlejohn, but they've obtained warrants for a sample of his DNA and to search his house and vehicle.
This was front page news. And so when the police department executed a search warrant on Daryl Littlejohn's home in Queens, the camera crews from the local TV stations were on scene, and they led their news story with a live shot from in front of the home.
We find empty bottles of bleach in the garbage. If he cleaned up the house with bleach, he was going to destroy DNA evidence. So the crime scene investigators took apart the drain in the sink, looking for hair fibers or blood. It was spotless. It was devastating.
Adding to detectives' frustration is the pressure from the ongoing media coverage and the public's desire to see Emett St. Ian's killer brought to justice.
She was a sable-eyed beauty is the way the Post used to describe her. She was a grad student. She had a very strong will, and she went her own way. It was a reminder that things can happen and the city's a dangerous place.
You go out with friends, you're in a bar, you're having drinks, you're having a good time, you're having a celebration. Your friends go home, you decide not to go home with them, and then you're never seen again. It's shocking, and it hits home, because So many people will sit there and say, I've done that. And that's what really, I think, took over everybody's attention.
When a case has sort of captivated the attention of a city, especially a large city like New York City, there can be an immense amount of pressure for investigators to solve the case quickly, especially if there is a concern within the community that there could be a killer in their midst and that they might be next. By getting the message out, the public might be able to report suspicious activity that they saw when they were leaving a bar late at night. Basically, they can be the eyes and ears for investigators when they weren't there.
The persistent media coverage eventually unearths a significant lead for detectives.
A young woman who was a college student at York College was watching a newscast, and she had been a victim of an unsolved crime just a short time earlier, back in November of 2005, and she saw in the background with the Klieg lights of the camera, she saw Daryl Littlejohn's van, and she said, "That's the van that I was abducted in." She had been on her way home from college classes when she was abducted by a man who seemed to be some sort of law enforcement and was suggesting that he was going to arrest her, and he handcuffed her and threw her in the back of a van. But it gradually occurred to her that this was not somebody in law enforcement at all, and this was an abduction. And so when the van slowed down and rolled around a corner, she opened the door and jumped out. And she escaped and survived. So what happens is the police take Littlejohn and put him in a lineup, but she can't make an identification of him. But the significance of this young woman's abduction was that there was a pattern to Daryl Littlejohn's conduct that was so similar to Emmett's case. He engaged young, attractive women and pretended to be in law enforcement and then abducted them, and they met foul play. Everyone was a suspect until Daryl Littlejohn emerged as a real suspect.
With a pattern of behavior and the means, detectives are certain that Daryl Littlejohn is the only person who had the opportunity to kill Emett.
I think, unfortunately, with people who are sexually sadistic, there may be people who require more aggression, more pain, or more suffering to be inflicted for them to achieve the same level or a higher level of sexual arousal, almost like a high. We would call these people increasers. So for him, there's an increased likelihood that he has fantasies that are compulsively driving him to do this, and that because he's aroused by power, control, and domination and hurt, increases the likelihood that homicide would be the result of any of the sexual attacks that he may perpetrate.
With the clock ticking, detectives interview a new witness, a security guard who works nights in the area where Emmett's body was dropped.
He remembers walking along Fountain Avenue and seeing a minivan, and a guy's inside the van on the phone because the phone's lit up. He didn't give us a plate. He didn't say for sure that was Daryl, but the same type of minivan that Daryl owns.
The fellow that worked at the landfill as a night watchman, his shift was supposed to be from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 12-hour shifts, but he wasn't always on time. The police department got his Metro card, and they were able to trace exactly when he boarded the first train or bus in the Bronx and took the train to Brooklyn and then got on a bus in Brooklyn to go to his job.
So he's supposed to be at work at 7. It's late. Now it's 7:30 as he's walking down this route on Fountain Avenue. Timing is unbelievable. He was at the right place at the right time.
The evidence was overwhelming that this was Daryl's van, and of course the description, limited though it was spot on. I felt very confident Daryl Littlejohn was not just the person who dumped the body, but he was also the killer.
Detectives are closing in on Emett St. Guillen's killer, Daryl Littlejohn, but their evidence in the case is entirely circumstantial.
Particularly if you wind up with a circumstantial case with no confession, with no eyewitnesses, the timeline becomes all that more important because your circumstantial evidence that you collect and gather either fits or it doesn't fit. And a lot of that has to do with the timing of certain things that happened leading up to the murder and then in the investigation after the murder.
Detectives do have an eyewitness account of a van matching Daryl Littlejohn's in the precise area where Emmett's body was dumped. And one detail stands out. The driver was using their cell phone.
Within a very short time, we had gotten a warrant for Daryl Littlejohn's phone records and cell tower records indicating the location of the towers that handled calls that he received at a certain time. And it turned out to be highly significant because eventually we were able to determine that there was a woman who was calling Littlejohn, and when she got disconnected, either intentionally or otherwise by Littlejohn, she called him back. And so there were these two phone calls that were made at crucial times, hitting off specific towers in Queens and in Brooklyn. It put him driving from Queens to the general location where the body was found and back again, right at around the time that the night watchman puts this vehicle there.
Detectives have now placed bouncer Daryl Littlejohn exactly where Emmett's body was dumped, less than an hour before police were called to the scene at 8:26 p.m.
The phone records, to me, are extremely important because they nail down the time. They put him doing something, not just in general, but at a relevant time.
But without physical evidence or a confession, they can't link Littlejohn directly to the murder.
We see in Emmett's case that they get really to sort of the seventh inning stretch in this case. They have nearly all the circumstantial evidence they need, but there's just that one missing ingredient to allow them to make the final push to the knife. And a lot of investigators may have rolled the dice and gone to trial with what they already had, but we see them hold out and stay focused, looking for that final piece to close the circle. And that often can mean the difference between making an arrest and someone being acquitted at trial and making an arrest and making sure that person never gets out.
But then, detectives get the break they've been hoping for.
Ken's calling me. The only thing he could say is, "We got DNA." I said, "What?" "We got..." It was an interesting case. Ken calls up and he says, "We got DNA."
Forensics have come back on the snow brush found near Emmett's body. Daryl Littlejohn's DNA is a match.
They could have easily have left it behind, and had they done so, we would have been without a piece of evidence. But I'm grateful that it was whatever number of feet away from the body, and a detective chose to pick it up. I don't know, something about it made him say, "I'm going to take this," and that turned out to be very fortunate.
Littlejohn's DNA also matches a speck of blood found on one of the zip ties used to bind her hands and feet.
So at least now we could say for sure, this is him. His DNA is not supposed to be there. I mean, I wasn't physically jumping up and down, but inside I was.
It solidifies all of this circumstantial evidence to the fact that his DNA is there. How could his DNA be there if he wasn't responsible for the killing? We were so involved in this case, and it was just, you know, when we finally got the piece of evidence, it was just, it was overwhelming.
Detectives can now piece together Emett St. Guillen's final 24 hours.
So we know that Claire and Emett leave the Pioneer Bar around 3:20. They're there out front talking and arguing about going home till about 3:30. Claire gets in the cab, she goes home. Emett goes to the Falls Bar. She orders her 2 drinks at the Falls Bar, probably around 3:45.
She got into a conversation with Daryl Littlejohn in which she was talking about the criminal justice system and the incarceration rate of black people. I believe he was offended by what she said and decided that this is the woman he was going to prey on.
I think either he offered her a ride or he followed her walking and then forcibly put her in the car.
She ends up in Queens in his residence.
From that point on is when, obviously, something happened between Daryl and Emett.
She was beaten up and raped pretty badly.
There was evidence that she struggled with him and he strangled her.
Detectives now estimate that Emett was murdered between 5:15 and 7:15 a.m., based on the final autopsy results.
Now he's got to get rid of the body. So why did he choose that place? Maybe he had driven past it dozens of times and said, well, that'd be a good place to dump a body. I don't know.
As Daryl Littlejohn drags Emett's body out of the van, his snow brush falls out onto the ground.
One thing that I'm grateful that crime scene had the foresight to pick up was a little cheap brush, because ultimately it turned out to be important.
But one question remains unanswered. What was Daryl Littlejohn's motive?
This was, in fact, the work of a random stranger and a random attack. And there's absolutely no question in my mind that this could have been the beginning of Littlejohn's career as a serial killer. And that were it not for Emmett's use of the credit card and some good investigative work, we'd be talking about far more victims.
Daryl Littlejohn is convicted for the murder of Emett St. Guillen on June 3rd, 2009. He is sentenced to life without parole.
Timeline was critical on this case. That's how you develop your story. You got a start and you got an end, and you got to try to piece it in the middle, and that's how you build your case and bring the person to justice who's responsible for that. There's nothing more satisfying than doing something like that.
You had DNA evidence, you had hair and fiber, you had phone work, you had interviews, you had canvases, you had video downloads. Every tool as an investigator we utilized. It's never going to bring back their relative or their loved one, but you do the best you can for them to give them closure.
I've talked to Emmett's mom, and whatever success we had in the courtroom doesn't change things for her. She doesn't have her Emett back. She doesn't get to see her have children or get married or have a successful career. But years later, they created a scholarship in her honor at John Jay. I would like to think that those who enter the field associated with criminal justice can look at Emett and say, this is someone who could have been me. That's why I need to do my job well and take it seriously, because the stakes are that high.
He was shot minutes before he walked in the door, which is scary. What would have happened if we were there?
A vicious murder.
It was obvious whoever wanted to kill him was very angry, because they probably could have shot him one or twice, but they had emptied their magazine into him.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
You know, they just didn't get along. They were fighting all the time.
Maybe an argument took place. Maybe there was disagreement took place.
Said, you know, hey, what are you looking at? You're staring at me. And he pulled out a gun.
The truth will be revealed.
We know that that last phone call actually came from after John was already found dead. So I think that phone call came from the guy that killed him.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Sylvania Township, a quaint, close-knit town bordering Toledo, Ohio.
People are happy out here. In Christmas time, the neighborhoods are all lit up. You could tell the festivities for the holidays are coming around. Every neighborhood tries to outdo the next neighborhood.
We've always been fairly lucky. We haven't had that many homicides. Probably the majority of calls that we get are domestic violences, and we get a lot of burglary calls.
But on a quiet afternoon, just 10 days before Christmas, two young girls make a grisly discovery.
I was 13, and my sister Nicole was 12. We were both in the same school at the time. We were the last kids off the bus, and we got home. Our dad's car's in the driveway. I thought, I forgot my keys in the house, and thank God Dad's home. So we try to walk in the front door. Front door is locked. Okay, maybe he's napping. Knock on the door, nothing. I go to the back door, still no answer. We look inside, try to see what was going on. My sister Nicole says, Dad's on the floor. I was like, what do you mean he's on the floor? She goes, Dad's on the floor, he's not moving. There's a front window on the house. There wasn't a lock on it, so I pushed the window open and got my sister inside. She unlocked the front door, and we looked at our dad. He wasn't breathing, he was blue. At first we thought he actually had committed suicide. I dialed 911.
911, what's your emergency?
My dad is on the floor of the house. He's all bloody.
Okay, first off, we need you to relax. Is your dad conscious?
Oh, he's passed out. He's on the floor.
Is he breathing?
No, he's not. Nicole, go check on him. He's bleeding. He's bleeding.
Where is your dad bleeding?
I think my dad is dead.
I was scared, 'cause I didn't know what was going on. The 911 operator told us we needed to go outside, because of course she doesn't know what's going on. And within minutes, we had police officers in our driveway.
Veteran homicide detectives Todd Slayman and Robert Caldwell are called to the scene to investigate.
When the 911 call came in, I was actually sitting in my office in the detective bureau, and originally I was told by the dispatcher that there was a possible suicide. And then shortly after that, there was an update, possibly that this was a homicide. So that led us to believe that this is not going to be a standard run-of-the-mill investigation. When we first arrived on the scene, Mr. Reby was laying there on the floor. He was on his side, face down. There was a guitar that was laying there by the body, so you could tell this was not a suicide. He was shot 7 times. He had several bullet wounds. Some of the wounds hit his shoulder, one wound hit his hip, but the wound that really killed him, it hit him directly right in the heart.
This crime stood out. That John Reby was shot this many times in the middle of the daytime, that stood out. It was the violence of it.
When we see someone shot 7 times, this is overkill. Many firearms actually only have a magazine that will hold 6 or 7 rounds. So someone literally emptied a gun into this man. That is not a restrained, tactical murder. That is a rage murder.
John Reby was a 39-year-old single father, taking care of his 2 daughters.
Oh, my dad was the normal, guy, loved football. He was a bowler, he golfed. He was very family-oriented. He loved spending time with us, doing things with my sister and I. He was a great guy. He met my mom at a gas station. And he said, nice truck. And they swapped numbers, and then they dated about 5 years before they got married, and then I was born 3 years later. And my sister 15 months after that. It was more him doing everything for us. My mom wasn't in the picture as much as she should have been. My dad just finally said enough's enough and leave, and I'll raise the kids myself.
John was self-employed as a heating and air conditioning installer. Money was tight, but he did everything he could to provide for his daughters.
My dad loved Christmas. We were supposed to go get a Christmas tree that night. Our house was actually a pretty small house, but every year, my dad always got the biggest, bushiest tree that he could find. He would get up in the morning and cook breakfast, like a big breakfast. Always said breakfast before presents. It was awesome. He loved it. When they told us that he was shot, I was shocked. Like, what do you mean? No, that can't be possible. Who would do it? And, you know, I just wanted to know why somebody would do that to my dad.
To find John Reby's killer, detectives must unravel the last 24 hours of his life, beginning with the crime scene.
We started processing the scene, and we found casings on the floor, gunshot casings. The casings have the caliber of the gun on the back of the casings.
It was a .380 semi-automatic weapon. They're small guns you could just carry in your pocket. So we knew what kind of gun we were looking for at that point in time.
When they scour the house, police don't locate the gun, but they do make some important discoveries.
There was no sign of a struggle. John we're assuming he was playing the guitar. He was probably sitting. So John may have not known it was coming, and there was no signs of any forced entry. So we believe whoever shot John Reby may have known.
At the scene, the blood that was on the body was not dry, and his body was still somewhat limber. The flesh was still soft. That led us to believe the crime was fairly recent. It definitely happened in the last couple hours.
Detectives talked to John's daughters, hoping to pin down his final movements in the hours before his murder.
That day, my sister and I, we got up for school, and the normal, brush your teeth, eat. Dad's saying, grab your backpack, don't miss the bus. He told us, I'm going to work. I should be home when you guys get home. We said, okay, have a good day.
After school let out, they got on the bus and were dropped off near their house at approximately 3:15 p.m. that day.
At 3:22, 7 minutes later, the 911 call comes in from Jamie and Nicole finding their dad dead, shot 7 times. We're looking back and putting the whole timeline together.
From John's daughter's information and the state of the body at the crime scene, detectives believe John was killed between 8 a.m. when the girls left for school and 3:21 p.m. when they found him dead on the floor.
The detectives wanted to know, do you have any clue what your dad did today? I'm like, no, I was at school. He said he was going to work. I'm not sure if he did.
Needing to pin down John's movements that day, investigators turned to his friend, Eric Babas, who sometimes assisted him at work.
Eric Babos was the handyman for John Reby and the jobs that he did for the air conditioning and heating company. Eric and John went to high school together, so they were longtime friends.
Eric Babas was low-key. He was wanting to give us information. He wanted to help us.
But Eric tells detectives he didn't see or talk to John the day of the murder.
Eric advised us December the 15th. John was not working, and he was taking that day off. And Eric was working at his brother's house, which is about 3.5, 4 miles away from John Reby's house. He advised us he'd been there all day.
With no leads from Eric, detectives turn their attention to John's estranged wife, Lisa.
An ex-wife, an ex-husband, an estranged spouse. This is someone who, in most circumstances, needs to be excluded as being a suspect and as a person of interest almost by default. You need to look at what were the dynamics of this relationship. What were any strains or stresses on the relationship?
What we heard from the girls is that, they just didn't get along. They were fighting all the time.
My mom was around for birthdays and Christmases and holidays. They kept in touch because, we're or her kids, but there's a lot of fighting.
Maybe there was some sort of vendetta or personal argument that had evolved to a certain level where she got angry and perpetrated violence that erupted in this horrible killing.
Hours after John Reby is found dead, police question his estranged wife, Lisa.
Lisa was very upset. She was emotionally distraught seeing her daughters in that state of being so upset. She was visibly shaken.
Some suspects will go too far, will go over the top. Excessive grief, excessive theatricality. It can have a number of motives behind it, but everyone deals with grief differently. So without knowing what that person's baseline responses to trauma and what their triggers are, you always need to dig deeper.
To find out whether Lisa could have killed John, investigators need to establish motive and whether she had the opportunity.
Maybe there was some kind of domestic issue between the two of them. We're looking to find out where was she that day, what was she doing that day, was she the last person to see John?
Lisa said that she last talked to John around 11:46 that morning.
With this new piece of information, detectives rework the timeline for the hours before John's murder.
A phone call can help build a victim's timeline, much like any device-related activity. It leaves a trail. It provides a definitive place where they are last seen and heard from. And the contents of that communication can also be very important.
They had talked about going out, possibly next night getting some Christmas gifts for the girls. She said that there was no duress, no anger.
Detectives look into Lisa's story and work to verify her alibi.
Lisa was a receptionist, and Lisa said that she was at work that day.
There was a couple witnesses there that had said, yep, she was there at the time frame that we were looking at.
And when the girls called her and told her what was going on, she left early and went right over to John's house.
With Lisa at work all day, detectives determined she couldn't be involved in John's murder, and she's no longer considered a suspect.
They were separated, but Lisa would describe John as a good father. He took care of the girls. You come into a lot of homes where the common denominator is the kids. I think John and Lisa had that type of relationship.
Lisa then offers up a piece of information that sheds new light on the investigation.
Well, in the meantime, she had checked her phone messages and she had realized that John had left her 2 voice messages just, a minute before 3 o'clock that day. And she played both those messages for us.
John Reby had called his ex-wife on the day of the murder and left a message asking her if she could go to the heating and air conditioning business in Toledo and pick up a check that was waiting for him for a project that he had done earlier in the week.
And then within a minute and a half, he called right back and says, hey, Lisa, someone is waiting for his money. I need you to go pick up this check.
There was a level of urgency to the second phone call.
Lisa, hurry up. Call me
His
back.
voice was definitely, higher pitched. It was more, hey, Lisa, why haven't you called me back? I need you. I'll explain it to you. But I need you to call me back. I got someone here waiting. So, yeah, there was definitely a different tone.
This was before cell phones really had taken off, so a lot of this was landlines, and you knew exactly where the person was. John had called her from his house at that time.
These phone calls are a significant development in the case and further narrow down the timeline.
From the phone calls, we know that John was alive at 2:58. We know that John was alive at 2:59. We know John was found dead at 3:21. So whoever shot and killed John, it was in that timeline. Now we have a 22-minute time frame that we're dealing with.
But it's what detectives hear next that turns the case on its head.
At the 2:59 phone call, you could hear something in the background. You could hear a second male's voice. That's when you can hear John say, I got someone here.
So we know he's in the house with someone, and that someone is probably the person that killed John, because 20 minutes from that message, he's found dead by his 2 daughters.
Detectives now believe if they can identify the background voice on the phone message, they'll find their killer.
At that particular time, I was involved with an FBI task force in Northwest Ohio, and we had access to Quantico, Virginia, through our office. So we sent the tapes to Quantico to try to get them enhanced so they can identify who's in the background.
The FBI had voice analysis that the FBI was unable to determine who that person was.
Getting no more information about the background voice, detectives ask Lisa, John's ex, about his enemies.
Lisa advises that the only person John had arguments with was Chuck from the heating and air conditioning company that John had subcontracted for. Chuck owed John some money for completing the job. John was very upset. Maybe an argument took place, maybe there was disagreement took place, so Chuck became a person of interest at that time.
He did owe my dad money from just previous jobs. I didn't know if there was like something going on with them.
Chuck is the owner of an HVAC company located just a few miles from John's home. With suspicion starting to swirl around him, detectives pay a visit to Chuck's business.
He was the guy that was in charge, very confident of himself, and he definitely wanted things done his way.
When police ask about his relationship with John, Chuck admits to owing him $500.
Chuck dealt with subcontractors, and he had learned that you don't pay your subcontractors until the job's done, or else they wouldn't complete the project. He thought not only John, but all other subcontractors, if you prepaid them, they wouldn't get the job done.
But Chuck said that John had completed the job the week before, and he actually had a check waiting for him.
Chuck tells detectives about a series of phone calls he had with John, all near the time of John's death.
The first phone call, I believe, was at 3:03, and John wanted to know if he could come send someone else to pick the checks up. And Chuck said, no, you have to come down and get the checks. There was another phone call at 3:05. John was saying, hey, can I send someone else down? No, you can't. You have to come down and get the check.
8 minutes later, the phone rang again.
The next phone call, there were 2 voices on the phone. And the second voice says, hey, John owes me money, it's $150, so I'm gonna come down and get the check. That call was at 3:13, and that's the one where Chuck said to the guy, hey, I told you before, I'm not changing my mind. John has to come down and get the check. The phone went dead. He actually hung up on him.
Chuck tells detectives he didn't recognize the other person on the phone. He shares his company's phone records to prove he's telling the truth.
Chuck said he was in his office that day, and he was with his employee. The phone records tell us that they had multiple phone calls, so we knew they were at their business.
With the company's phone records and Chuck's statements clearing him from the murder, detectives Caldwell and Slayman now look at the implications of his story.
We narrowed down the time frame from the phone calls. So now we got an 8-minute time frame that we're dealing with.
The timeline in this case is remarkably tight. We have a series of telephone calls, and then minutes later, his 2 daughters coming home. You can't help but question whether his daughters actually crossed paths with the killer. And if they were just a couple of minutes earlier, if they too would have been victims themselves.
He was shot minutes before he walked in the door, which is scary. What if the bus had gone a different route that day and we get dropped off first instead of last? We could have been there, walking in the door. Like, what would have happened if we were there?
Working with a timeline of just 8 minutes, from 3:13 to 3:21 p.m., detectives need to uncover the identity of the man with John, the afternoon he was murdered.
What are the odds that somebody else gained access to the home and killed him in that same length of time and was still able to escape, it really leaves only one possibility, and that's the other man that was on the phone at 3:13.
It was an incredibly tight timeline at this point, and it's now just a matter of trying to figure out who that person that was in the house.
As business owner Chuck is wrapping up his interview, he drops a bombshell, telling police that at 4:06 p.m., he received a final call.
Chuck says it's the same person. So the same guy calls again and says, hey, John's in the hospital. I need to come down and get the check. And that's when Chuck said, when John's out of the hospital, he can come get it. Not that Chuck believed him.
That last phone call came in after John was already found dead. Chuck told us that was the same guy that was connected with those other calls from John Reby's house. So we believe that last phone call came from the person that killed John.
As police wait for a trace on the phone call, they circle back to the crime scene, looking for any new clues.
The girls never seen anybody leaving as they were coming home. We talked to the bus driver. The bus driver didn't remember seeing anybody leaving the scene.
Where the house was, it was a very busy road. We combed the neighborhood, and no one saw or heard anything.
With no new witnesses or leads, the investigation hits a wall.
You get a little setback. It'd be much easier in the case if, you know, neighbor 2 doors down would have said, hey, I saw this guy running out of the house. You know, that would have been huge. But there was nothing. It was extremely difficult. It was extremely difficult.
Then they get an unexpected break.
I got a phone call from Eric Babbis. He advised me that he might have some information that would assist in our investigation.
Eric tells police he had been at a party at John's house the Friday before his murder, when a man came in he didn't recognize.
He told us that there was a guy that came in there and he was delivering drugs and said that his name was JR. And then when he was leaving, JR said, you know, hey, what are you looking at? You're staring at me. And he pulled out a gun and he pointed it at John and Eric and threatened
John Reby was a dedicated father. He took care of his daughters. But John Reby also liked to party. He liked the nightlife. He drank. He used drugs on occasion.
We got John's phone to see who he had talked to the day of the 15th. When we were looking at phone records, we could see that John had called JR.
Detectives now zero in on a new suspect in John's murder, local drug dealer, JR.
Sabina Township police detectives, when they were told that JR was a drug dealer, they thought that perhaps he had something to do with the crime. And maybe John Reby owed him money for the drugs.
Police ask John's friend Eric to come down to the station again, hoping he can help identify JR.
Eric described him, he was a big guy. He was imposing, kind of short-cropped hair, well-built, and he brandished a gun, but he didn't recognize him.
When detectives run the name JR through the database, they discover his real name is Valen Rogers, and he's been arrested for an unrelated crime.
So myself and Sergeant Colwell, we went down to Lucas County Sheriff's Department and we did an interview with him in a back conference room. And we actually sat and talked with Valen Rogers about John Reby. Valen Rogers was a big guy. He took care of himself. He obviously worked out.
When detectives question Valen about the day of John's murder, he says he was visiting a friend 11 miles away.
According to Valen, the last time he spoke with John was on the 10th. That was the last time he said he's seen him alive. The day of the homicide, John was trying to score some dope, and it called Valen Rogers, but they never connected.
From the phone records, you could see where it went to voicemail, so we knew that that information that Valen Rogers was giving us was true.
Valen also denies waving a gun around at John's party.
Valen says, I was at the party, I scored. I scored some dope for John, I was in and out. He said he liked John Reby. He said he always had the money, it was a simple transaction. Why would I kill him?
Detectives tracked down friends of Valen Rogers, and they confirmed they were with him in another town until 4 p.m. on the day John was murdered. Detectives also looked closer at Rogers' activities the night of the party.
There was another person that Eric said was at the party, so we called him up and basically said, hey, can you come in and talk to us for a little bit? We asked him, did some guy come there and deliver drugs? He said, oh yeah, some guy came, he brought some drugs, and asked him, did he pull out a gun and threaten you guys? And he said, no, there was no guy with a gun. So at that point, we knew that the story that Eric Babbitt came to tell us that night was a complete lie.
Now investigators turn their attention to John's longtime friend, Eric Babbitt, and discover he's got a criminal past.
He had a drug and alcohol problem. He had a DUI arrest. He had a temper problem. He had domestic violences. His wife had moved out on him. His kid wasn't staying with him anymore. He was a guy that was, kind of down and out.
My dad helped him out a lot. Like, he had a kid younger than us, and my dad helped him. Like, hey, I know you don't have any work right now. You can help me out, and I'll pay you to, grab my tools, help me carry things.
The more detectives learn about Eric, the more red flags they find.
The girls thought Eric was not a good influence on their dad. He partied too much, and they never liked him. They thought he acted strange around them.
He was kind of weird, but not anything where I thought he would ever do anything like this. Like, shoot my dad.
Investigators have zeroed in on John Reby's longtime friend, Eric Babbitt, as their prime suspect in his murder.
Eric's alibi was that he was renovating his brother's house. It was on West Acre, which is about, 3.5, 4 miles from the crime scene. And he said he was dropped off by his father around 10-ish and picked up by his brother around 4:30 that afternoon, and he had never left the house.
Detectives Caldwell and Slayman reach out to Eric's family, asking if they can confirm the handyman's alibi.
They were saying, yeah, we dropped him off and picked him up. But during the time frame of the murder, he's unaccounted for.
Eric Babos was at the house alone the whole day, and so he couldn't get anyone to substantiate the alibi that he was there. He could have at any time gotten a ride from somebody else, ridden his bike, or walked to John Reby's house.
Through John's phone records, detectives catch Eric in another lie.
Eric said that he had last spoken with John the days before the homicide, and he had not been there that day, he had not talked to John that day. But from the phone records, that's a lie. He spoke to John the day of the homicide. He spoke to him in the morning, around 8 in the morning. Then he called him around 11-ish.
Investigators confront Eric with this information, and his story changes.
He admitted to us that he did talk to John that morning, and he said he wanted to know if they were going to go work that day. Eric said John told him, I'm going to have some coffee. I'm going to, see what's going on. I don't know if I'm working there or not. And then Eric said, we got to get paid. And John said, yeah, I'll get with you later on it. So we knew they were talking to each other on the phone.
Once you start lying to investigators, they are going to lay hard on that person and start to look at everything they've said, and they're going to keep digging.
Suspicion about Eric keeps growing as Jamie remembers something unusual that happened the day of her father's murder.
Eric called my house and actually asked for my dad, and I said, well, no, my dad can't come to the phone right now, something's going on. And he's saying, I want my money. It's $150. Like, why? All of a sudden you're calling and asking for money?
Now you know what the motive could be about the shooting that has to do with this check or this money.
Eric said he called because he wanted to get the $150 because he promised his son that he was going to take him Christmas shopping. So he wanted that money right away.
We know that John called Lisa before 3 o'clock that day and left her a voice message and said there was a guy waiting there and he's waiting to get his money. Now we find out Eric wanted to get his money. So Eric Babbitt actually kind of gave us his motive.
Who else had motive? Who else knew about the $150? John knew about it, and Eric knew about it. Who profited from it? Eric. Eric's got something to cover up. He's not being forthcoming. It's that standoffish attitude where, you know, I'm slouched in my chair. He was kind of cold. His only alibi is I wasn't there. It wasn't me.
Having identified a motive, detectives take a closer look at Eric's movements on the day John was killed.
We went to his brother's house where he was supposed to be working that day to see if there was work going on, those kind of things. It was kind of unusual because there was a bike in the side yard there, and you could tell by the tracks in the snow and that someone had been riding that bike in the last day. I actually had my son, who was 11 years old at the time, and I had him ride a bicycle from Eric's brother's house to John Reby's house and timed him. And there's 2 or 3 different ways you could go to do it, and my son was able to do it in about 20, 25 minutes. So we knew Eric could do it easily there and back.
John was killed in between 3:13 and 3:21 in the afternoon, and Eric Babis's alibi for that time frame isn't holding up.
He puts himself at this house doing work. He said he was going out back and forth, taking stuff out to the trash can. We checked both the neighbors that were next to this house, and I said, did you ever see Eric Babis there? And these people knew Eric, you know, because he had actually lived in that house for a while. And they said, no, we never saw Eric that day.
With Eric in their crosshairs, detectives get a search warrant for his home and phone, looking for evidence that connects him to John's murder.
Well, he was searching for anything, a gun or clothing items with some blood stains or something. Maybe it was on a clothes, maybe unaccounted for money, maybe a check stub, or anything that can link to the crime.
But investigators aren't able to locate the gun that killed John Reby, or any items that yield physical evidence.
It would be pretty rare or stupid of someone to shoot somebody 7 times and then hold on to that gun. That gun, I'm sure, is in a river somewhere.
Still thinking it's not real. Like, why is this happening? You know, waiting for answers, waiting for what really happened. Pretty much twisted our whole world around. It's horrible.
While detectives have established that Eric had the motive and opportunity to kill John, they don't have physical evidence tying him to the murder. They revisit the timeline and learn that at 4:15 p.m., Eric's brother took him to the bank and hardware store after picking him up that day.
There was a video camera at the bank, and there was a video camera at the department store he was in.
The police detectives were able to determine what Eric Babis was wearing that day through video that was taken.
Detectives get another search warrant, this one specifically for the clothing Eric was wearing on December 15th, the day of the crime.
We sent that shirt that he was wearing to the lab, and that came back with gunshot residue on that.
So you have gunshot residue on a garment, and you don't have a gun. Well, gunshot residue is actually very important. It's pointing you at least in the right direction.
It was on the left sleeve, which made sense because the way the gun would reject, it would probably spray his left sleeve. I mean, this was an investigator's dream.
After discovering physical evidence linking Eric to the murder of John Reby, detectives Caldwell and Slayman set a trap for their prime suspect.
We asked Eric Babis, would there be a reason, you know, you would have something on that shirt? You know, do you sport shoot, or, you know, do you skeet shoot? Are you a hunter or something like that? No, I don't do anything. I don't own any guns. You know, he locked himself into that.
Investigators are certain Eric is their killer, but they still don't have enough evidence to make an arrest.
You don't always have an offender on video pulling the trigger. You don't always have DNA. Cases are built a brick at a time, and when you don't have enough circumstantial evidence, that's when you may not get convictions.
Detective Slayman and Caldwell fear Eric might get away with murder. Then they get the break they've been waiting for.
Chuck had advised us that there was that last phone call where someone was trying to get paid, trying to get the money. So when we got Eric's phone records for December the 15th, we saw that that phone call actually came from Eric Babis's cell phone. He called and asked for the money again. So that last phone call that after John was already found dead came from Eric's phone.
That was huge. That was a huge significant break in the case because now we have Eric Babis that's been identified by Chuck. He said, that's the same person who said, I want to come down and get the check. There's only one person that was connected to that, John's helper, Eric Babis.
On December 29, 2004, just 4 days after Christmas, detectives arrest Eric Babis for John Reby's murder.
We went and knocked at the door, and I remember he came down, walked down the steps and sat on the steps. And we told him we have an arrest for aggravated murder. And he just got up and put his hands behind his back. That 100% reinforced we had the right guy. It was Eric Babis.
Detectives are now able to reconstruct the final 24 hours of John's life.
The morning of the homicide, John Reby gets his kids off to school. Around 8 o'clock, he gets them off to the bus and that. And he spoke to Lisa around 11:46 that morning. You know, John stays in, and he's got that urge to party a little bit. So John called Valen Rogers, but they never connected. 2 o'clock, Eric, who's been dropped off at his brother's house on West Acre, decides, I'm gonna go over there, I'm gonna confront John because I want my money. During that time, before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Eric gets inside the house and confronts John. Hey, I need this 150 bucks. We did a job for you. I worked for you. I want my money.
John at that time tried to appease him and reached out to the ex-wife, Lisa, to see if she would go get the money. And he was unable to make contact with her. At that point in time, John called Chuck to see if it would be okay if his helper, Eric, could just go pick up the money, and then he was advised that John had to sign off on the check. Eric didn't believe that, so John called back again, and this time he actually handed the phone to Eric Babis, and they asked Chuck to explain to him why he couldn't come get the money himself.
We think right in that time, right around 3:13, either John is deceased or John's going to be dead. Because at 3:21, Jamie and Nicole find their dad dead. There's a fourth phone call at 4:06 where Chuck from the heating air conditioning place picks up, and it's Eric Babis saying, hey, I'm John's helper. John owes me money. Can I come get the checkup? No, John has to come. There's absolutely no doubt in that case that Eric Babis shot John Reby 7 times, over $150.
I think money was really just the rationalization. It was about ego and proving a point. No one was going to deny him that amount of money, whether it was $150 or $150,000. And at the end of the day, what we're dealing with here is actually someone with sociopathic tendencies who could rationalize in their twisted mind that that was a logical outcome.
Eric's known us since we were born. So it's not like he didn't know us. We had enough interaction with him. It wasn't anything like this random guy, random person who's upset about something, who killed my dad. No, I'll never forgive him. I'll always be angry.
On August 5th, 2005, a jury finds Eric Babis guilty of the murder of John Reby and sentence him to life in prison.
My dad and Eric have been friends since high school. Like, how could you do that to somebody you've known most of your life? And my dad helped him out a lot. So, like, why? Do you not have a heart?
The timeline was everything. I can't remember in my 38 years a case having such a close timeline. You almost never get something like that. Everything played out. You could match the crime to the time, to the phone calls, the 911 calls. It all fit together very tightly. It's good when we find that little piece of evidence, that little clue that you can climb the ladder and solve a case and bring closure. Everybody wants to know what happened. So you're serving the community, you're serving people, you're helping people.
This case is one of tragedy. It's Christmas time. You have a father murdered, leaving 2 daughters fatherless. A family was destroyed, reduced to ruins. Very, very difficult.
My dad is a great dad. He's a hard worker. But I miss his goofiness and his singing in the car. That's what I miss the most. It's hard knowing my kids won't know him. And my son actually asks about him because he sees pictures of him. And it's hard. And he's like, "Who's that?" "Oh, that's Grandpa." "Where's Grandpa?" It's hard to explain. And Christmas is hard, but we just try to make the best of it. I'll still always remember my dad.
I can't imagine being that age and finding my father shot and killed. No matter how bad the circumstances are, people want to know the truth. And I think we served them well. They have closure, they can put it to bed, they can go on with their lives.
To choke somebody to death requires a great deal of intent.
An innocent victim.
She was very much a social butterfly, and everybody knew her.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
Love triangles are powder kegs. They are very unstable.
We said, "Hey, we think she's dead. Did you kill her?"
If she's telling him it's over, he really has nothing to lose financially by killing her.
The truth will be revealed.
Boom, this is the guy who did it. Now we just have to prove it.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Anna Maria Island, a 7-mile strip of soft white sand in the Gulf Coast of Florida.
What's unique about Anna Maria Island is it's just naturally beautiful. It's got wide beaches, soft sand. It does attract a lot of tourists, but the community's been able to stay free of corporate tourism. It has that old Florida feel where the buildings are still low to the ground. There's not major signage everywhere, so it's really a gem.
The criminal activity of Anna Maria Island relative to the rest of Manatee County is pretty low. Murders are extremely rare.
It's early morning, November 2008. 2 patrol deputies pull over a white convertible for a broken taillight. But when they approach the car, the driver takes off running.
First thing that pops into their head is probably a stolen car. So the first person you go after is the driver.
The deputies give chase and eventually apprehend Robert Corona, a 2-bit criminal known to local police.
He's a car thief, and he had several convictions for that type of offense. However, he did not have any violent convictions.
When we first talked to him, he said, oh, he met this woman and a man in the Gator Lounge bar, and they wanted some crack. So she loaned me her car to go get it. And not having the whole story, we said, oh, okay.
When investigators run the license plate of the convertible, they see it belongs to 49-year-old hotelier, Sabina Mucil Buer.
Sabina is a native German, and she was in the tourism business there, and so she came to Anna Maria and fell in love with it. She was very much a social butterfly, and sort of everybody knew her. She met her husband, Tom, and they decided to buy a hotel together, which turned out to be Haley's Motel, a nice little popular spot that people really loved.
So I came out to Haley's Motel where Sabine lived with her husband to make notification that her car had been impounded. And I said, well, it was impounded in East Bradenton, off 14th Street.
Bradenton is just 9 miles east of Anna Maria Island, but in every way that matters, it's a world apart.
The area is not the best part of town. There is a certain amount of street crime that occurs there.
Her husband, Tom, says that she doesn't go there, she doesn't drink, she doesn't smoke, she doesn't do anything like that. She was not out there. There's prostitutes and bars, and she had no interest in either.
This is so out of line for her. I mean, she is a straight and narrow, definitely was not on drugs.
Would she lend that vehicle to anybody?
Never. She wouldn't let me drive it.
Tom says he hadn't seen Sabina in 2 days.
Tom advised us that they were estranged. They had been estranged for quite a while, and that she was living mostly half a mile away at her boyfriend's apartment, Bill Cumber.
Tom directs investigators to Bill's apartment, but Sabina isn't there either.
When we went to Cumber's residence and was talking to him, he said the last time he saw Sabine, it was like about 10 o'clock, November 4th. It was election night, and she had left to go to a party celebrating the election. Well, she never showed up.
And she was very enthusiastic about President Obama's candidacy. So that was kind of a tip-off right then that something might be wrong.
In my experience, it's very rare for someone to disappear off the face of the earth and not come back within 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours. And knowing that their car had been stolen and they were nowhere to be found, that's very quickly a situation that becomes suspicious.
Tasked with investigating Sabina's disappearance is Detective Peter Ramponi.
There's a lot of steps that have to be taken to establish that someone who is missing is indeed dead, and it's very difficult. We checked all of her credit cards, we checked airline flights, but there was no paper trail of her having done anything after 10 o'clock election night, November 4th.
Detective Ramponi impounds the car and calls in the forensic team.
There was evidence in the back of the car which indicated that something had happened. The back seat was cluttered with newspapers, and there was some Halloween stuff back there, and some kind of a stuffed bird thing laying in the back seat. When they moved the bird, we saw the hole. The seat cushion was cut out and the seat padding underneath of it, and it was like you could see the floor of the vehicle.
Investigators conduct a luminol test on the back seat.
Luminol, which you spray on it, and if it turns a certain color, like blue, then it's human blood.
It's definitive. There's blood all around the cutout patch in the back seat.
So they took DNA swabs from around that circular patch, both the inside of the patch and then around it, and then they sent that evidence off for DNA testing.
They also find drops of blood on the exterior rear left door.
We believed at that point, we felt pretty certain that she was dead. We just didn't know where.
A no-body homicide or a suspected murder, but with no body. These are cases that overwhelmingly point to that there is no other conclusion other than that someone has been murdered. And in the absence of a body, you really need to build that evidence through other means.
To find out what happened to Sabina Mucil Buer, detectives must unravel the last 24 hours of her life.
It's extremely important, especially when you have a whodunit kind of thing. You want to establish a timeline so that you can place people where they were or weren't during that period. And you go through and rule them out or add them in.
Their first suspect is the man caught driving Sabina's car in the early hours of November 6th, Robert Corona.
The first person you go after is the driver because they're more culpable to being involved in a crime. So we decided to go back and talk to Mr. Corona.
The potential theory would have been that Sabine had somehow driven into the city of Bradenton, encountered Mr. Corona, that he had killed her and taken her car.
Corona had initially told them that Sabina had lent him the car to go buy drugs. It sounded plausible, but that was before they found the blood.
So he's confronted and he's told, look, this is basically a homicide investigation. You better be straight with us about how you came into possession of this car.
We said, hey, we think she's dead. Did you kill her? And he readily admitted that he stole the car at that point, that the drug thing was made up by him. And he immediately gave us another story, that he was checking cars behind the businesses. He found one at the Gator Lounge with a window open and the keys in it, how convenient, and drove away and got stopped, arrested.
In an attempt to verify Corona's story, detectives head to the Gator Lounge in Bradenton. They show the night bartenders a picture of Sabina and a picture of her car and ask if they've ever seen either before.
And they both said, no, we've never seen her before. And I asked about the camera in the back of the bar, and he said, it's fake. It's just there for looks. So we said, okay. But the bar manager did say that when she left after the bar closed, she saw Sabine's car parked in the southwest corner of the building, and it was just sitting there.
And that fit what Mr. Corona was saying.
So at that point, we pretty much eliminated Corona.
With Corona's account believed to be true, detectives are now able to narrow down the timeline of Sabina's disappearance.
The bar manager would have seen Sabine's car in the parking lot after 2:30, because that's when the bar was officially emptied, closed. Corona said he went through the parking lot, walking down the back of businesses, and that was the only car in the parking lot. And the time he got pulled over was just minutes after he took the car.
The fact that the bar manager sees the vehicle there in the early morning hours of the 6th tells the investigators that sometime between 10 and 11 p.m., when Cumber says he last saw her alive, and the time that her vehicle is first observed at the Gator Lounge, she's likely been killed.
With Corona ruled out, investigators are looking at just two main suspects.
One of the things you do when you have a homicide, the first thing you look at is the immediate circle of family and friends. And in this case, you know, Tom was there, Cumber was there, and really nobody else was there.
In cases where a female spouse is the victim of homicide, we logically think of intimate partners. And in this case, you know, you have the husband who's a business partner, and then we also have a current boyfriend with some potential motivation as well.
We got a lot of phone calls from friends of Sabine, and some people said, well, Tom did it, Tom did it. You know, other people were saying Bill Cumber did it. So it's a mind game.
With little physical evidence to work with in the no-body homicide of Sabina Mucil Buer, detectives are looking at both her husband and her boyfriend as possible suspects. They start by interrogating her boyfriend.
Tom and Sabine had been married for years at the time of her disappearance. But the new element in her life was William Cumber.
Bill Cumber's 39 years old, and he's known as quite a charismatic guy around town. And, you know, some people would say he was a good-looking gentleman.
Mr. Cumber was very candid about his background. He said he had a history of getting angry at women and doing violent acts when scorned. He confessed to that and was convicted of that and went to prison for that.
But he insists that he's a changed man.
I haven't had any rage episodes. I used to have them a long time ago. Okay. But I've done things to train myself, to help my temper. I've been to classes. I quit drinking liquor. Okay. I only drink beer. I don't do drugs. You know, I've got my mind focused on where I'm heading in life.
Bill credits Sabina with giving him the new start he so desperately needed 3 years earlier.
Bill Cumber showed up at Haley's motel one day, had told us a story of how he had just gotten out of prison and was looking for work. He said, I am coming from a difficult past where I have been in prison. I'm very handy with things. Is there anything I can do around your hotel for a little walk-in money? So he began to do little projects because they're very welcoming, you know, heartfelt people who saw a guy they wanted to help.
Bill tells detectives that what started as a friendship between Sabina and himself soon became something more.
He was a craftsman. He was an excellent woodworker. Saw some of the things he had made and they were just astounding. And I believe he was an artist as well. So she was kind of receptive to those traits that this guy portrayed and possessed.
Bill's criminal past is viewed as suspicious, so investigators ask him for a detailed breakdown of the last day he spent with Sabina.
He said they had gone to the dentist in the afternoon, Sabine and Cumber, and she was paying for him to have some dental work done. And I think she left him for a time and then came back to the apartment on Magnolia Avenue where they had dinner. According to Mr. Cumber, that he made vegetarian spaghetti. She drank wine.
And everything was going good. You know, she was happy the boats were coming in with Obama. And I decided to step outside and smoke a cigarette. But she caught me coming in. She doesn't want me to smoke. She ain't gonna be around a smoker. She can't stand the smell of smoke. And she just decides to leave.
You see her drive away, or?
No, I don't go outside and chase her down or anything.
Okay, so she leaves. Around what time is it?
This was around 10:20 p.m., somewhere around there.
Mr. Cumber claimed that he had not spoken to Sabine since then. He had been attempting to reach her by phone several times.
Probably like 5-6 times.
Okay. And she never called you back?
No.
He then went over to Haley's motel on the morning of the 5th to confer with Tom Buer about her disappearance. Mr. Cumber claimed Tom Buer had told him that Sabine sometimes just went off on her own and would reappear.
I said, well, you know, did you hear anything from her? You know, could you tell her to call me? And he goes, don't try and hunt her down. When she's ready to come back around, she'll come back around. So I took it at that.
He didn't seem upset. He didn't appear to be in any frantic hurry to help look for her.
Detectives subpoena Bill's phone records to see if he's telling the truth about trying to reach her.
There were no calls. Nothing. After 10 o'clock on November 4th, there's no record of him calling anybody. And that's a big red flag.
While they can't rule Bill out, detectives struggle to find a reason why he might want Sabina dead.
She was taking care of him completely. She was renting the apartment, providing the food. She was the money person. And so that didn't really add up very well.
This relationship was serving many needs for Bill. He gets out of prison, he has nothing. He has somebody who's willing to cultivate a relationship with him and even financially support that relationship.
Mr. Cumber obviously was a suspect given his prior history, but police were never able to find any ultimate motive that established him as the perpetrator. He was losing a great deal with her being gone.
He's still on the list and we're watching, but evidence and interviews and situations took us in a different direction.
When asked who he thinks would want to hurt Sabina, Bill points the finger directly at her husband, Tom, insisting he was jealous of their relationship.
He has made threats in the past towards me about, when he caught us sleeping together at the motel.
Love triangles are powder kegs. They are very unstable. You introduce jealousy, you introduce resentment, you introduce humiliation. And those can be powerful motivators for someone who needs to be in control.
Then, out of the blue, investigators get a call that a fire has broken out at Haley's motel.
When the fire broke out at the hotel, it was such a second shock that immediately people believed that the two were related, her disappearance and the fire. And whether Tom maybe said it because the hotel was struggling.
Fire is always a great eradicator of evidence. That's why when it shows up in an unusual or suspicious circumstance, you always need to dig deeper in terms of, was the fire the main crime?
After a fire rages through Haley's motel, just 12 days after Sabina's disappearance, investigators hone in on her estranged husband, Tom.
To me, the obvious or intuitive reasoning behind why Tom may have burned down the hotel is obviously, number one, to potentially destroy evidence. Number two, we come back to money. Fires equal insurance settlements for the most part, and in this case, you could have that double whammy.
With heightened suspicions about Tom's involvement in Sabina's disappearance, detectives subpoena the motel's financial records.
There was some financial problems. The business wasn't doing that well, and Tom had a buyer from Europe, Germany to be specific, who was interested in buying the place. And with Sabine being gone, Tom gets all the money.
With money being a possible motive, detectives asked Tom whether or not he had taken out an insurance policy on Sabina's life.
Tom told one of my detectives that he has an insurance policy out on her for $100,000. Tom volunteered that. He forgot about the $300,000 policy he had taken out years before. And that concerned us as well.
Not only that, investigators discover that he recently filed court papers to have Sabina officially declared dead.
Insurance companies are obviously very meticulous about confirming death before paying out. And that's why proof of death is often necessary, and people who are after these types of settlements will ensure that there is that proof.
And as that played out, people started to dig up those possible feelings of, well, if they haven't found her, why would he want her declared dead at this point? Maybe there's still hope she's alive. This is kind of strange.
With their suspicions deepening, detectives question Tom about his whereabouts between 10 p.m. on November 4th and 2:30 a.m. November 6th, the window in which they believe Sabina was killed.
Tom said he was attending an election party and was there with his girlfriend, and there were several people that would have attested to his whereabouts during the time of her disappearance.
Alibis can be tricky in that just because you were at a certain place at a certain time doesn't necessarily mean that you couldn't have also been somewhere else immediately thereafter and returned to the original place. We may be dealing with a large, as we are in this case, window of time where you had the opportunity to literally be in multiple places, not at once, but in immediate succession.
Detectives search Tom's house, looking for any evidence of foul play.
Tom had an injury on his head, small scratch, and we asked him about it. And he said, I was hanging some blinds in my bedroom, and when I was hanging them, they fell on me and struck me in the head. So he went and looked at the blinds, and they're kind of askew, and there's a little drop of blood on one of the blinds, which is consistent with the story he had told us. So he didn't hide it. You know, he told us right away where he got it.
And when the fire marshal tests Tom's hands for accelerant found in the motel's debris, they find nothing. Finally, detectives confront Tom about Bill's claim that he was jealous of his wife's extramarital relationship.
She felt madly in love with this guy. Okay? It worked, the thinking. It made me angry at first. You know, I just couldn't believe she would do this. And so it was there that I accepted everything that she had done. We didn't talk about Bill. I had told her, okay, you do what you need to do, but he's not going to be at the house, and he's not going to be at the motel. You know,
you had some feelings.
Well, we did. You know, we were very close friends. We hopefully still are.
Tom said the romantic aspect of the relationship had ended years ago, but they remained friends and business associates.
They had the house divided. He lived in one half, she lived in the other. The kitchen was in the middle, that was neutral. They both stayed out of each other's way.
Tom had a girlfriend, so the idea that somehow he suddenly became enraged and jealous at this particular point didn't seem very likely.
But despite the fact that detectives aren't able to conclusively rule out Tom or Bill at this point, there just isn't enough evidence to charge either of them in Sabina's disappearance.
I only have heard of one case where they prosecuted somebody without a body and they got a conviction. And we really had to get a body.
The sheriff's office brings in cadaver dogs to search a section of the beach near Haley's motel.
We felt pretty certain she had been buried out at the beach somewhere. We started using dogs, ground-penetrating radar. Then we used a bulldozer, and we would scrape very little, and if they hit a branch or something, they'd stop. And we'd dig around it and find, oh, no, keep going. And we dug up a mile of beach, very wide, and went down as deep as you could.
But they come up empty-handed.
It got to a point where, no, nobody's dragging a body this far.
Then, a tip comes in.
There were two women who claimed to have seen someone who looked like Sabina at the airport.
There's cases of missing persons who go on vacation for, say, a month and don't tell anybody. And they come back from their vacation and everybody's wondering, you know, where they've been. So it was raised as a distinct possibility. Could she have gone somewhere and not returned? Or maybe she'll show up?
But she would have had to use some form of money to survive on, and we couldn't find a trace of that.
There was no record of Sabine having taken any flight. Also, video camera footage from the airport was reviewed, and there was no image of Sabine at the airport at the time the women claimed to have seen her.
Tip lines are a double-edged sword. When the tips are screened properly and you have someone actually to follow up on them, they can be very good. Naturally, once they're set up, you're going to bring the cranks out of the woodwork. And a lot of these people will call in with well-intentioned tips, not knowing that they're just creating red herrings, but they can really bog down police departments. You can find yourself in a quicksand very, very quickly.
Yeah, there's some frustration, absolutely, but there was also determination. You have to chase every lead until you hit a wall. And then you go to the next lead and you're chasing that one until you gather enough information, or you hit a wall.
Detectives finally catch a break in the case when they get a call from a neighbor of Sabina's who lives on the beach.
They have a sidewalk which is just wide enough for, say, a golf cart to go down, and it runs parallel to the beach. There was a little jut of wooded area that came off that sidewalk towards the beach with trees, and the neighbor, he was out clearing out some stuff, and he moved some logs or debris, and he found a purse in there. He did open it and look, and it was Sabina's purse. But he had our ID and some, I guess, credit cards, a cell phone. Whoever disposed of it there had to know the area kind of to be on that walkway that's, you know, only accessible by side streets, and this wasn't near a side street. It just made us think, well, I know who knows this area pretty well.
The discovery of Sabina's purse buried near the beach provides the first solid clue to who might be responsible for her murder.
Its location is critical because it's just a couple blocks down from Mr. Cumber's residence on Magnolia Avenue. And it just keeps pointing back to Mr. Cumber, that he is the person responsible.
With that in mind, detectives take a closer look at Bill's prison record.
A few years before, Mr. Cumber met a woman, felt that she had rejected him, and so he set fire to the residence that she was residing in at a time she and several other individuals were inside the house.
Now knowing that Bill's history includes an arson conviction, investigators question him directly about the fire at Haley's motel.
Fire marshal said there was an accelerant used. At some point, I believe the fire marshal spoke with Cumber. They did some kind of test, and he had some kind of accelerant on his hands. And Cumber explained that away as at his workshop, his lock was stuck, and he sprayed WD-40 in there.
Mr. Cumber does allow them to search his apartment. They looked for any kind of gasoline containers. They examined the area of the apartment for traces of an accelerant, but they weren't able to find anything to definitively link him to the arson. But they find blood on the couch inside the apartment, which they then take swabs of and submit for DNA testing.
Then, detectives notice something else.
I noticed on his hand, he had a wound right in the center of his palm. And I asked him, I said, where did you get that? And he goes, oh, I was riding my bike and I skidded and I fell into the shells and I scraped my hand. Now, I've done that my entire life as a kid. You don't get a blister in the middle of your hand. That blister on his hand was from a shovel.
Detectives bring Cumber down to the station for a more serious sit-down. What they see solidifies their suspicions.
We had him come into the office, and Detective Alvarado and Detective Kenny interviewed him. I was watching on a video, and they questioned him for quite a while, and they asked him, what about the cut in the seat? Something to that effect, and he made an up and down motion like he was holding a knife and making a circle and cutting out the seat cover.
So for him to have made that gesture indicated he knew the shape that had been cut out of the seat.
I was watching the video, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's how the seat cover was taken out.
Mr. Cumber would have had no means of knowing that other than having been the person who cut out the piece of upholstery.
And in our minds then, boom, this is the guy who did it. Now we just have to prove it.
Detectives decide to force Bill into showing his hand.
Police will often bluff suspects by presenting them with claims of evidence that they don't actually have in hopes of getting an admission.
Detectives know that the camera at the back of the Gator Lounge, where Sabina's car was found, isn't functional. It's a fake, but Bill doesn't know that.
When we interviewed Cumber the next evening, we mentioned to him, well, there's a camera out behind the Gator Lounge. We haven't got the tape yet. And then when we do, we got to process it, which is nonsense. But whoever dropped that car off is going to be on that video.
That led Mr. Cumber to go to the Gator Lounge and confront the manager and ask, in fact, whether they had video cameras trained on the parking lot, which only a guilty person would have done. No innocent person would be concerned that he had appeared on a video. So that was one of the most telling aspects of the case that pointed to Mr. Cumber's guilt.
That was an indication that we're on the right track. You know, we got him. We just got to get him.
While investigators wait for the lab to process the blood found in Bill's apartment, they uncover an important clue.
November 4th, sometime after 10, Sabine's car had been parked out on the beach, a quarter of a mile away from the apartment she shared with William. And that raised concern. And the reason we found that out is because deputy was driving around that night and he saw the car parked in a no parking zone and he wrote it a ticket.
The discovery helps illuminate Sabina's movements on the night she disappeared.
The timeline we had was Sabine's last known to be with Mr. Cumber between 10 and 11, according to his statement. Her car is documented 2 blocks away by the parking ticket at 5:10 a.m. on the 5th, so roughly 6 hours after he last said he'd been with her. Well, it's only 2 blocks away from where Mr. Cumber lives. It would make sense for him to want to place her car somewhere other than their residence if he's killed her. And then, of course, he can easily walk the distance back to his residence that evening.
It gave us a timeline, told us where the vehicle had been, as opposed to the Gator Lounge, and it just kind of all fit.
When detectives attempt to arrest Bill, they find that he's left town.
He was making a getaway, trying to disappear. Fleeing is kind of a good indicator of guilt.
As investigators zero in on Bill Cumber for the suspected homicide of Sabina Mucil Buer, he's apprehended, fleeing the state.
He's heading up north towards I-4, and he had a taillight out, and he shouldn't have been driving. He's got no license. And he's on probation. Well, normally a violation of probation, you know, you may get a little bit of jail time, or you can get before a judge who finds out there's a murder investigation going on, and you can get 13, 14 years, which is what he got. So he's on ice.
That gave us all some breathing space to try to continue the investigation without having to worry that, you know, he could potentially kill somebody else.
Meanwhile, the detectives finally get the forensic results from the blood taken from Sabina's car.
DNA is perhaps the most persuasive physical evidence you can have. We had Mr. Cumber's DNA on the driver's seat area and also in and around the area that had been cut out in the back seat, and we have Sabine's blood in the area that's been cut out. Keeping in mind that Mr. Cumber supposedly had never driven that car. So we decided we had all the evidence we were going to get. We were probably not going to find her body, and so ultimately the decision was made to charge Mr. Cumber with murder.
As they prepare their case against Bill Cumber, detectives put pressure on him to confess.
We hounded him for years and years. We just didn't let up, and he just was exhausted and knew he was going to be in jail for a long time, and he just gave up.
Today's date is October the 15th, 2015. Mr. Cumber has agreed to give us a statement concerning the death of Sabine Mucil Buer and give us information concerning the location of her body.
Cumber finally tells detectives exactly what happened to Sabina Mucil Buer in her last 24 hours.
She took him to the dental office for him to get some dental work done. And he was observed to be in ill temper. They then watched the election returns. She drank a bottle of wine, and somewhere in the area of 10 to 11, he tried to smoke a cigarette. She found out about it and basically told him it was over.
It wasn't just the smoking, it was the controlling issues that Tom was having on us. I didn't like that, I wasn't digging that, and she would side with him.
So Sabine's saying she can't go on with this anymore. What happens at that point?
I lose control. I hit her in the head, and then, I don't know, it's a disgusting situation, man.
And what do you do at that point?
I reached and grabbed her throat and started choking her out until she wasn't moving. I decided I didn't want to go back to prison.
He then wrapped her up in a blanket, put her in the back seat of the car, and he decided he was going to bury her out on the beach.
The following day, he takes the car, drives it into Bradenton. This is now November 5th, 2008. And he leaves it at the Gator Lounge with the keys in the ignition in the hopes that someone will take it and thus become the prime suspect in Miss Mucil Buer's disappearance. He takes the last bus back to the island and goes back to the apartment that they had shared. I don't think Mr. Cumber planned to kill her prior to the evening of November 4th. I believe he was angry at the loss of what she could provide for him financially. Having been denied something he wanted, he chose to kill her. However, to choke somebody to death requires a great deal of intent. It's not a split-second act like shooting a gun in the heat of the moment. It requires a sustained effort, which shows some intent to kill.
In exchange for a reduced sentence, Cumber agrees to reveal the location of Sabina's grave.
Mr. Cumber then got in a law enforcement vehicle and took the police to the location, which was a couple of blocks away from Haley's Motel, under a covered area where people can sit on a bench and look at the beach. He was somber. He kneeled down at the burial site, supposedly said a prayer. He affected remorse. Whether he actually felt it, I don't know.
Investigators begin digging for Sabina's remains.
We started finding items associated with Sabine roughly 3 feet down from the surface of the sand. Her clothing was with her. I believe a piece of jewelry was with her. The remains were completely skeletonized. I think finding the body provided the family with a measure of relief and certainty that they had lacked. I think ultimately this was something that gave them some peace of mind.
Bill is sentenced to 20 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole when he is 60 years old.
The timeline is important in all murder cases, but in this case, because she initially wasn't found, we had to come up with a convincing narrative, potentially to a jury, that in fact she is dead, and this is why we know she's dead. And the timeline was basically the critical aspect of that narrative.
But the victory is bittersweet.
You never forget the family members of the victims. You never forget their trauma. It's the ultimate act of violence, and it disturbs a family, typically, and in this case, it disturbed an entire community.
You got to weigh closure against sorrow and loss, you know? And that's a difficult thing to measure. For the family, can't ever really be closure. Because you wake up every day and you know they're gone.